This might just be the mastering processor you've been missing to get that commercial sparkle you've been looking for, and you've probably been searching for a while because this claims to be the world's first transparent exciter. Be sure to smack the like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and let me know in the comments, does the new Weiss Exciter get you, wait for it, excited? I'm pretty excited, let's check it out. First, you should know that exciters are audio processors that generate new harmonic content, whereas something like an EQ is only supposed to boost or cut existing frequencies. The Weiss Exciter is a new plugin developed in collaboration with Softube and Weiss Engineering. It aims to be the world's first transparent mastering grade exciter. This is great because with most exciters, you can easily push it way too far, way too fast. The Weiss Exciter aims to solve this problem with a few unique signal flow features, so let's run them down. First, let's talk about the adaptive nonlinearity mode. This mode adapts the harmonic generator to the source signal so that harmonics are always relevant and consistent regardless of signal level. If you turn this off, then you'd start to have harmonics generated much more similarly to the way harmonics are generated when you overload a preamp. So a simple way to think of it is your signal gets too hot and you get harmonics. Leaving it engaged, on the other hand, leaves the harmonics in the sweet spot always, which is pretty clever and definitely useful. Next, let's talk about the different harmonic modes. If you dig deep into the manual, at the heart of this plugin are these 4 harmonic modes. You get a soft and hard mode, which most of you are probably going to be comfortable dialing in. And then they offer 2 more modes, polynomial 3 and polynomial 5. These are very subtle until they're not, which is why you probably want to use that adaptive mode with these. It's also why they probably included the adaptive mode in the first place. Finally, let's talk about additive processing and how the signal flow in this box actually works. This exciter straight up uses a parallel path for the processed signal, meaning your original signal stays untouched and the added harmonic excitement is blended in separately. In other words, with the dial all the way down, you'll hear the audio exactly as it came in, no change at all. This is straight up my alley in terms of the way I like to think about running effects. It's basically like sending your source to a bus and blending in the effect with a fader, and I think that's great. Real quick, I wanted to run through the interface itself just so you guys kind of understand what you're looking at on screen. So across the top, this is where all of your Softube plugin controls are, right? This is where you can load up presets, save as presets. You've also got these sidebars here, which I find these to be very useful for a variety of reasons. You can see your signal level in, signal level out, adjust, etc. In the settings panel, you can turn on button tooltips, etc. This is all pretty standard Softube stuff, and it's great. I really like it. Diving into the GUI itself, so you've got this pre-filter up top, and then you got some post filters down at the bottom. Over at the bottom here, this is a little gear icon, and this is where you're going to select what type of harmonic mode that you're in, and then this is where you're going to turn on or off adaptive mode. And again, if you read through the manual, it suggests that you probably want to leave adaptive mode on all the time. So here's where you have your contextual stuff. You can change the graph range from 3 dB all the way up to 18 dB range. So down at the bottom here, you have a very simple bypass switch, but then a not so simple ganged mid-side mode. Ganged relates to how the controls function here. So if you're in ganged mode, then any change that you make over here is gonna be your control for both channel 1 and channel 2, which you can see are separate. The reason that's important to know that is because if you're in mid-side mode, well, you probably want to make channel 2 have different controls, right? So you wanna make sure that you're aware of what ganged means and how that works. This is where you're gonna determine how much harmonic content is actually gonna be imparted on the parallel signal. And then we get into the most important bit right here. This is where your parallel signal gets introduced. So if you pull this knob all the way down, you have no effect. You could change everything you see on screen here. You're not gonna hear anything. This is the parallel signal being introduced. So that's kind of everything right there. Once you dial this up, you're gonna start to actually hear how these controls are impacting the signal itself. And then you can choose between the different filter slopes. You have a more gentle slope, or you have a steeper slope, which relates specifically to your pre and post filters. And then you've got a monitor on or off. This is just gonna monitor and like solo up the effect so you can hear it. And then you've got a stereo width knob. So I went ahead and called this thing up. I just threw it right at the end of a very simple master bus chain, not doing anything crazy on the master bus. It's just some tape G-bus and then a little console distortion. And then this. And so what I did is I called up a preset here. I literally have just the simplest preset. I called up mastering midside, just like that. Okay, so I think that sounds pretty good to just call up a preset like that. You can really hear how the drums, specifically the cymbals and the hi-hats, kind of get brought forward a little wider, kind of gives a little bit more space and dimension to them, which is nice. But I also was kind of hearing a little too much harmonic content with the vocal itself. And that's because the vocal that I recorded has a ton of harmonic content in the first place. So we're kind of adding a lot to something that already had a lot. But let's dial this back and see how much more like subtle we can make it and see if it enhances anything. Yeah, very good. So let's throw it on something else entirely and just kind of see what it does. So let's throw it up on the drums. Okay, as you can see, this is nothing on this track until we get to the lead vocal, which is all placeholder stuff. And then nothing else here. We've got a G bus. That's the only thing happening here. So let's throw on the new Weiss. It's pretty cool how you can just fiddle with a few settings here and come out with something that you like really easily. This is quick and dirty here, but watch how I can get the cymbals and the hi-hat to kind of sparkle quite a bit more. Okay, and of course I threw this on the drum bus So I'm also affecting a bunch of other things at the same time, but I think it does a great job. Now let's bring this over to the bass. What can I do for a bass guitar? I think this is actually a really cool use case, and I love doing this with plugins and hardware and anything gear related in general. I love taking something that was meant for one thing and completely just trying it for a completely different purpose. This is really cool. I can get really interesting distortions on a DI just by pushing this way too far. So as transparent as it can be, it doesn't have to be. You can use it creatively, and you always should be using your tools creatively. Now you're probably sitting there saying like, when would I ever make my bass guitar sound that way? Well, you probably wouldn't make it sound that way prominently, but you would try to make it dirty and mangle it up and then blend that up into the mix a bit. It's a very common thing to do. A lot of people like to do it with like amp sims and distortion, but this does harmonics really well. So why not use it for that? All right, let's try another example here on the acoustic guitar. Love that. That sounds awesome. Listen to how, now of course I got it on fully wide, but listen to how that 12 string just starts to get wider as I bring this up. And also this is kind of the intended way of using it, I think, is find the amount of harmonics, right? Like dial it in here, then bring it in here. Love that, man. That is super cool on that. You know, normally when I try to get my acoustic guitars wider, I'd call up something like the Roland Dimension D, just blend that up in there because it does some interesting things. But if I wanted something that didn't sound like an effect, I'd be calling on this immediately for that. I can just get a little bit of width without any sort of weird artifacts from stereo wideners or any other kind of processing box that'll do that. This is great. Now, it's certainly subtle enough and nuanced enough to be heard, but not overdone, which could be called transparent. And because it can have such a clean addition of new frequency content, it absolutely could be great on a master bus. So yeah, I'd say it 100% lives up to what it set out to do. I think it sounds great. All right, let's dial it back a bit. So if you saw my last video, we talked about the famous Dolby 361s, and I think that this is a great point to make. If you're sitting there in your studio and you have endless options and you want to breathe life into a track, why would you reach for one over the other? And this is a very nuanced, important distinction. When you reach for something like the Dolby 361s, it's like an obvious choice and effect. You can't get that sound out of it. You hear the effect immediately. Whereas this exciter tries to make it seem like there isn't an effect there at all, as if the source material itself was almost organically captured that way. And it wants to stay out of the way. It doesn't want to be heard. So it's very useful to have something like this in your toolkit, because when you want to breathe life into a track, but you're not going for an effect, that's how you know that you're going to want to reach for something like this plugin. and something like this particular exciter. It can solve a really particular problem, and it can solve it very well. Can you dial it in too far? Absolutely, just like with anything. But, you know, again, it's very transparent. It sounds great. Okay, so what do you think? Can you see yourself using this on your masters? Let me know in the comments. A quick reminder, if you'd like to support the channel further or a chance to connect with me directly to help with your productions, go to thestevekinney.com where you can find my latest track presets or links to my Calendly to book time with me directly. And lastly, a big thank you to Softube for giving me a chance to just share my thoughts as transparently as this exciter can be. I appreciate you guys. See you in the next video. Cheers.